Sometimes life just doesn't go how you plan it. Like, you know how you thought you were gonna get a college degree and make enough money to live in an apartment at 20, but then the world got hit with the crazy zombie virus and now you're still stuck in your hometown working retail 6 years later? Yeah, kinda like that, except this is a show review and this rant is only tangentially related. Anyway, I finished Kipo and the Age of Wonderbeasts a couple weeks ago. I got all my thoughts collected, I put them into a review, and everything was going just swell. But when I was just about to release the review, literally as I was putting finishing touches on the thumbnail and trying to find a good title, I discovered that this show is one of about 100 Netflix shows that are going to be leaving the service over the course of the year, in this case in late June. And because a number of these shows were Netflix originals, it's anyone's guess if they're going to pop up again anywhere else. Now, obviously, the fact that the work of quite possibly thousands of people is just going to be wiped from Netflix without a second thought makes me very angry, and I've got a whole rant about it you're going to hear at the end. And I definitely don't think a review of this show is complete without that context. Hell, the first thing I did after I discovered this was start messing with the script to try and fit it in. But when I started the show, I didn't know any of this. In fact, I didn't really know much of anything about this show when I started it. I didn't even have an idea of what it was going to look like.
Don't know why, but it sounds big.
A couple of friends had watched it and said it was decent, but other than that, I had precisely 2 pieces of information going into this. 1, it had been animated in Korea, which is by no means unusual for cartoons these days. And 2, its main protagonist was voiced by Karen Fukuhara.
There is no milkshake frosty enough to cool my rage.
An actress I knew primarily for having voiced Glimmer in the 2018 She-Ra reboot.
I said no one panic!
That begs the question of how I even heard about the show in the first place. I don't know. I thought one of my friends recommended it to me, but as it turns out, he was expressing interest in something completely different, so I don't know. It came to me in a dream. Anyway, once I turned on the first episode, though, I discovered pretty quickly that that's not the only She-Ra connection here. They're both Netflix original series produced by DreamWorks with the same target demographic, and as a result of that, they've got a pretty similar animation style, and obviously this invites comparisons between them.
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture.
Now, I've seen She-Ra. I actually quite liked it, and with that show's own impending exit from Netflix next month, you can bet you'll be hearing more about it from me fairly soon. But there were definitely parts of that show where there was room for improvement.
Okay, we've been slightly better.
So as I realized how closely linked these shows were, I started asking myself, how do they actually compare? Do Kalb and Spop stand out from each other? And which one's the better show? And obviously there was only one way I was going to be able to answer those questions, so... Alright, let's start with the basics. What the heck is a Kipo? Well, she's a Kipo.
Kipo. My name's Kipo.
And these are some Wonder Beasts.
I get stuck with the 2 mutes.
They call them mutes, actually. Not in the sense of can't talk, though. Actually, some of them talk a lot.
Today marks the beginning of a new age. A golden age!
Rather, it's short for mutants. Mutant what? Well, mutant everything, pretty much. We've got narwhals, monkeys, insects, snakes, cats. This one's voiced by Orochimaru.
He flutters around saying, "Look at me, I'm so pretty."
Eventually, he has to tire out. Any moment now. Yamya knows you.
They're in charge of the surface now, and what's left of humanity is mostly living in underground cities called burrows. Oh, and also, it turns out some of them took a look at the millennia of human exploitation of animals and decided it's time to turn the tables a little bit.
Reign supreme over what?
Humans.
It sure would be a shame if one of them attacked Kipo's burrow, and in the confusion she ended up on the surface with no idea of how to get back home. God damn! Well, guess it's time for a transformative journey of self-discovery through the weird and wonderful remains of civilization, or whatever. You might call it Kipo's Journey. Not Kino's Journey, that's a different show.
I don't like those choices.
That was a bit, but those shows do have one thing in common in that they're both trying to show us the beauty of a flawed world. Unlike most media that takes place in the post-apocalypse, Kipo doesn't take a dark tone with it. Instead, it shows this new world in a more positive way. Foreign, but with a lot to explore and discover. I said weird and wonderful, and I genuinely think that that just about sums up the world we see, especially through Kipo's eyes.
Oh, you were hungry, weren't you?
Kipo isn't afraid of the surface. She's in childlike wonder, experiencing everything for the first time. Not to say that all that childlike wonder is charming, though. There's quite a lot more random bursting into song than I expected when I started the show.
Down with the humans, the surface is for mutes.
Now, I've seen shows that have a musical element before. Phineas and Ferb comes to mind.
Don't stop! Can't stop! I got a platypus! was controlling me.
But I don't think this show really integrates it very well, and to me it mostly comes off as cringe more than anything. Outside of that, though, I actually really like the soundtrack. Lots of shows, especially cartoons, are still kind of shy about having hip-hop and rap in any way that's not parody, but Kipo absolutely embraces it. It gives the action sequences a really unique feel, and it fits right in with the literal urban decay that the setting is. It has some in-universe importance for a couple characters, too. I love it when shows do that. Speaking of the characters, I probably gotta talk about them. Look, I don't want to call them bad, because in the grand scheme, they really aren't, but there's certainly room for improvement. I like Wolf, she was cool. Benson and Dave were pretty alright. I can see people not liking Scarlet, but I actually thought he was pretty good too.
I renamed him Francis. He just learned the can-can. Show them, darling.
Everyone else, though, is a bit of a mixed bag. Now you, Yum-Yum, you're a little angel, and I will not hear otherwise. Kipo has a tendency to just come off as annoying.
There is no milkshake.
And that's not a good look when you're the main character.
Am I crazy to try? No.
Yes.
Amelia isn't really interesting or compelling enough to be a good villain. Song is a little bit of a nothing burger in terms of growth, save a couple token gestures towards it in her first episode. Jamak is just weird.
Burrow girl.
It's not like these are the worst characters I've ever seen in a show or anything, but character was something that She-Ra absolutely excelled at, so seeing Kipo's performance with it was a little disappointing.
I win, you take us to Selenius. At no cost.
That's a terrible deal.
Put him in the dirt.
This is so dumb.
Also a little disappointing was the character development, which sometimes happens in odd ways. For example, Benson being gay. Cool. Like the concept, but the way they introduce it is bizarre. They send Benson along with Kipo, with whom his romantic chemistry has been limited at best, on what amounts to an amusement park date, which culminates with a love confession.
I think I like you.
And that revelation.
I'm gay.
It feels like the show is trying to answer a question that I certainly hadn't been asking.
All right, look, hot stuff. I know you and me have a complicated will they, won't they thing going.
We don't.
And I would get it if it actually seemed to me like the show was shipping them, but the thought hadn't even crossed my mind until about 2 minutes before that moment. Also, hey, is it just me, or does this lore drop make the rest of this episode horribly uncomfortable? Not even in a way that, makes sense. I just, don't want to look at this anymore. Why they didn't just naturally introduce it later when they actually give him a love interest, I don't know, it bugged me. Something else that bugged me was how kids show this show's solutions to problems are. And I made fun of She-Ra for solving things with the power of friendship, but this is on another level.
Friendship wins forever and ever!
And there's that classic kid show trope of every episode having its "what did we learn today" moment.
You can't end a war by fighting it. My friends helped me see that.
And I'll probably complain about this point more whenever I get around to talking about Avatar, because that show has this problem way worse. But the short of it is that we don't need to write kids shows this way. The little people understand more than the big people give them credit for. And that's not to say that the message is bad. This show makes good points about prejudice, xenophobia, holding grudges and the like, but the way that message is delivered has this naivete about it that doesn't really help anyone overcome any of those issues. And then once they start coupling it with the singing and dancing, it just borders on laughable.
We messed up.
I would never claim that She-Ra is a masterpiece in this department either, but I definitely felt like it was a belt up in the art of show don't tell. Anyway, that brings us right back to the questions I had at the beginning, and, well, this is by no means the same show as She-Ra. In fact, once you get over their visual similarities and some of the writing, they really don't have an awful lot in common at all. On the one hand, this is a good thing. It makes it an original show, even more so than She-Ra, which, remember, was using characters in a world that already existed. And that's one of Kipo's good points. I love the world it builds and I love the vibe it creates, and I think it has a lot of solid ideas. But the execution, sadly, is kids' show, and not a particularly good kids' show either. I'd have to say that put head-to-head, She-Ra would win out for me. But that shouldn't diminish this show's ability to stand on its own merits. I didn't love every moment of it, but on the whole I did enjoy myself while I was watching. Well, I probably wouldn't watch this show again myself. I definitely don't think I wasted my time doing so in the first place, because I think this show sets a really good blueprint for other shows to try and follow down the line. If that happens, we might someday be looking back on the show like we look back on the original She-Ra now. It's a show that walked so another show could run. But sadly, given what we now know about the show's upcoming removal, it's an open question if we're ever going to get there. So hey, remember how Netflix might buy out Warner? Yeah, this is exactly the sort of BS we can expect more of if that deal goes through. Or was already infamous for this shtick. Infinity Train, which is one of my favorite TV shows of all time, is now nearly completely impossible to watch legally unless you want to pay per episode on Prime Video. And in continuing to remove shows like Kipo and She-Ra, which by the way is something they've been doing for a hot minute, Netflix has shown that their attitude towards content is no different than David Zaslav's. Even though I don't love this show the same way I loved Infinity Train, this isn't the kind of treatment any show deserves. Say tomorrow it isn't Kipo. Say it's something like Stranger Things or Full Metal Alchemist, scrubbed from the network so some fat guy in a California mansion can get a nice juicy tax write-off or royalties from a new show that will just go the way of the dodo itself in another 5 years. Shows are works of art, not commodities to be traded, and I'd encourage you to get out there and watch this one before it goes so that it isn't forgotten.
Whatever.
On my scale, I give the show a high 5 to a low 6.
I reject that criticism, but you're entitled to your opinion.
Hey, do you want to share your thoughts on this review? Do you want to recommend me a show to review in the future? Do you want to see more content? Comment, like, subscribe, ring the bell!